Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jane. You're welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'll be showing us how to draft a beautiful top with a BASQUE effect. That's a BASQUE waistline and also an underbust tightening effect. So if this is something you are interested in, please watch the video to the end. All right, if you're a returning subscriber, if you're a new subscriber, thank you for stopping by. On this channel I upload pattern drafting and sewing tutorial. So with me on the screen, I have the materials that I'll be working with. I have my two colored fabrics that I'm going to be using. I have my tape, I have my scissors, I have my pencil, I have my rulers as well. I also have my pattern paper. So on this pattern paper, I've imputed the measurements for the front. So this is for the front. Now the distance from the shoulder to the length of the top is 20 inches. All right, so the distance that I have from the length, that's from the shoulder to the length of this top, is 20 inches. And you can see that on this paper I have indicated a center line. That's the center front line. That is where all of our measurements will be starting from. So on that line I have placed my shoulder line at the top. Okay, I've placed my shoulder line at the top. I've also placed my armhole line. I've placed my bust measurement, that's the distance from the shoulder to the bust. I have my underbust line as well, the distance from the shoulder to the underbust, and then the distance from the underbust to the waistline down to the length of this top. Right, so these are all the measurements that I have. And you also see that I have my shoulder slope as well and my armhole line drawn out. So now we are going to start with drawing a new neckline, okay, a style line for this neck. So because I want the neckline to a little bit higher, I'm going to measure out, I'm going to place my tape from the top and I'm going to measure out 7 inches. So 7 inches will be the length of the neckline. All right, so I'm going to mark this across my paper and then use my ruler to mark out a broken line. So this broken line will serve as our new chest line. I hope we understand that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead now and mark out these broken lines all across the paper. This will serve as our new neckline. So from this point now, I'm going to take the dart legs. So for the dart distance, you're going to be needing your bust span. So your bust span divided by 2. Mine is 3.75. Okay, so the distance from one nipple to the other is 3.75 in this case. So I'm going to be marking it all across. I'll place that mark on the bust line, the waist, the underbust, and also to the length of the blouse. And after taking up this measurement, I'm going to go ahead and connect them with a straight line. All right, so connecting them with a straight line now. So after that, you go back to your waistline to open up the dart legs. So for the dart, I'm going to be taking 1.5 inch for the dart. So on both sides of the dart legs, I'm going to be having 0.75 on both sides. Then I'm going to go ahead and draw out the dart shapes on both sides of the dart leg. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm drawing out the dart legs on my pattern, right? And then I'm going to be connecting it down to touch the hip line of this top. So you can see that the dart has been connected from the bust line down to the hem of the top, down to the length of the top, sorry. So after you've gotten your bust, your dart leg, sorry, the next thing we are going to do now is to place our circumference measurements. Now to place your circumference measurements, you go back to your chest line. All right, see, I already have my chest line there. So my chest line, you place your bust circumference, that is divided by 4. So my bust circumference divided by 4 is 9 inches. That's 36 divided by 4, 9 inches. Then we come down to the waistline. The waist is 30 divided by 4, that's 7.5. Remember that we took 1.5 inch darts and we are going to have to replace it by the side. So I'm replacing the 1.5 inch dart that we took on the waistline. Now coming down to the hip line, the hip is 40 divided by 4. I have 10 inches. So I went ahead to mark that there. So right now we are going to connect the side of this pattern so that we can create the side seam for this pattern. So what I'm doing right now is placing my ruler from the chest down to the waistline, and from the waist we will curve down to touch the hip line. All right, so that's what we are doing right now. And after that is done, you can see that we've created the side for this pattern. Okay, so moving forward, next thing to do after this is to go ahead and impute the side dart. So remember that this pattern has a side dart. Okay, so before we get to the side dart, you come back to your under bust line, measure your under bust circumference, which is 7.5. now you can see that I have a little bit of excess after I've marked out my under bust measurement. So that excess, I'm going to take it back to the under bust line and then distribute it amongst the dart legs so that we can have an under bust tightening. So towards the center front of the pattern, I'm going to take half of an inch because I got like 1.25 inch. So I'm going to mark half of an inch inward, and then towards the center front, the side front dart legs, I'm going to mark 0.75 inch for the dart. So for the under bust tightening, I went ahead to mark 0.5 inch towards the center front, and then towards the side front I went ahead to mark 0.75 inch. So what I will do next is to connect them back to touch the apex, that's to touch the bust line. So as you can see me doing on this video, I'm connecting those darts that I just took on my under bust back to touch the apex, that's the bust line, and then bringing it down to touch the waistline. You can see how easy and simple that is, right? Okay, so that is it for the under bust tightening. You can skip this part if you don't want to do this, but I recommend you do it so it will give your top a very nice fitting. So after you've gotten this, now do note that all of these darts is going to be cut out at the end of the day. So when you are cutting out your pattern, you're going to be cutting out this dart. So that's why I'm just shading it with a colored marker to remember that you're going to be cutting out this dart. So now that that is done, the next thing to do is to place the side dart. So this pattern has a side dart to it. So on your bust line, you're going to come down by the side. You're going to come down by 1 inch. Okay, then you are going to connect it to touch your bust point. So this will serve as your side dart. So this pattern, the front is usually longer than the back. That is why we are taking a side dart. I also do note that this side dart will also be eliminated later on. So this is the side dart for the pattern. Right, so now that that is done, we are going to now work on creating the curve for the chest line to touch the under bust. Now on our vertical line at the center front, where we have the new chest line, the broken line, you're going to come in by half an inch. So ensure that your measurement is coming from this vertical line that is running on the center front line. Okay, so from that point you see that we came in by half of an inch. Then we are going to connect from that point to touch our under bust line. And to do this, I'm going to be using my curve ruler because that point is a curved part. If you're familiar with drafting a corset, this is what you're going to be doing. So place your ruler on that point at the chest line, connect it with a curve to touch the under bust line. Now for us to complete this curve to touch the armhole line, we need to close our bust dart, right? So what I will do now is to take my scissors and I'm going to slash that midline. So you see that straight line we have running from the bust line down to the length of the top. We are going to be slashing that line all the way from the lower part of the top down up till we get to the bust point. So when you get to the bust point, you're going to stop. All right, so now after you've slashed that straight line, you can now go ahead and fold in your side dart. So slashing that line will help you to be able to fold in your side dart properly. All right, so here it's what it is. I've transferred my side dart automatically to the waistline. You can see it's very easy. So now what I will do is to just take my sellotape and pin down the dart at the side so that we can move on. All right, so now that that is done, the next thing we are going to be doing now is to take your ruler. All right, you're going to be taking your curve ruler, and then you're going to be connecting from the under bust to touch your armhole line, and that is it. That way we have created the remaining curve of this pattern. So you take your ruler, place it at exactly where you have your under bust line, and then ensure that it touches your armhole line. So you've gotten that curve now. The next thing, after you've gotten this curve for the side, we are now going to work on our neckline. All right, so you can see the pattern already does not have a neckline, so we are going to be adding up our neckline. So the neckline, we are going to be connecting it from the shoulder to touch the ½ inch we came in on the broken line. So just pay attention, see where I placed my ruler on the broken line. Ensure that it is touching exactly that ½ inch we took at the new chest line, and after that is done, this is it for the pattern. So for the neckline, you can decide to go lower than this. You can decide to use your original neckline. So whatever you are comfortable with, you can go ahead and do it. So right now I'm going to go ahead now and cut out the pattern. All right, now that we are done cutting, what we are going to do next is to draw out the backs effect on the waist. So you can see that the waist dart and the underbust dart, I haven't cut them out yet. So I'm going to be joining my two pieces together. That is the center front piece and the side front piece. I'm going to be stitching them up together. I'm going to be stepping them up together. All right, so I'm going to tape them, and the reason why I'm taping them is so that I can just have a smooth line from the waist down to the center front line. All right, so now I've joined these two pieces together. What I'll do now is to connect from the waist to touch the point where our backs is going to start from. So what you will do at this point now is to take your ruler, and then you're going to connect from the waist. So from the waist, you can either decide to come down by 1 inch. If you don't want the line to start exactly at your waist, you can either decide to come by 1 inch before connecting it to the center front. And also you can decide to make this a straight line if you don't want your line to be curved. Okay, so right now I have drawn out my backs effect. Now I can go ahead and cut out now. So I'm going to now cut out this lower line now. All right, so after cutting out this lower line, then you can now proceed to also cutting out your darts. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. I've cut out the lower line for the backs, then I can now go ahead and cut out the remaining darts that is not important. Okay guys, so here it is. when you are done cutting out this dart, you're done with the front automatically. All right, so this is what it will look like after you're done cutting out the dart. So remember that because of that dart, one side might be longer than one, so when you're adding your sewing allowance, ensure that you match up the sides so that when you are sewing you don't have shortage at that side. Okay, so here it is, we are done cutting. This is the center front. I'm going to label it. This is the center front. I am going to be cutting one piece of this, and remember that this part is on fold. All right, so this is center front is on fold, and the other one is the side front. You're going to be cutting out two pieces of this. So the center front is on fold, while the side you're going to be cutting two pieces. Center front is just going to be one piece. Now going back to the top, that's the yoke now. So if you see on the picture, we have some form of gathering at the lower part, that's towards the under bust. So what I'm going to do at this point now is to just mark out straight lines. I'm going to mark out straight lines on this yoke, and then I'm going to slash them open. All right, so we are going to be marking out straight lines on this yoke, then we are going to be slashing them open with our scissors. After you've slashed them open with your scissors, you're going to place it on a separate pattern paper, and you're going to be opening it up. So I advise you just open up by 1/2 inch all through, depending on how much volume you want at that side. But seeing that we don't really want a lot, so just open it up by 1/2 inch. So whichever of all the lines that you marked on the yoke and slashed open it, space it up by 1/2 inch, and then after you spaced it up by 1/2 inch, use your tape to tape it down on your new pattern paper. Okay, and then you can go ahead and add sewing allowances all over it. You can see that I added sewing allowance all over my own, and this is what it will look like after you spaced up the yoke for the front. So guys, at this point, after you spaced it up and you've added your 1/2 inch sewing allowance all around it, then you can now go ahead and cut it out. Okay, so we are cutting out the yoke for the pattern. Remember, I added sewing allowance to it, 1/2 inch. So after cutting, this is what it looks like. All right, so this is what the yoke, the center front and the side front of our panel for the front looks like. I hope you like. If you've not liked this video to this point, I don't know what you're waiting for. Please like, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. All right, so let's move on to the back. So guys, onto the back, I have my markings already. I have my lines drawn out on my paper. I have my zipper line, which is 1 inch for the zipper allowance. So moving on to the armhole for the back, what you need to do is to place your tape on the straight line, get the midpoint, and then go back to your chest line, get your bust circumference divided by 4, place it on the chest line. The bust circumference we're working with here is 36 divided by 4, that is 9. Place it on the chest line, then use your armhole curve to connect these 3 points together. Connect the shoulder drop to the chest line to create the armhole for the back. Right now that this is done, what we'll do next is to get the dart placement. So for the dart placement, you come to your bust line, you take your dart, that's distance from one nipple to the other, that's your bust span. My bust span is 7.5 divided by 2, you have 3.75. So 3.75 is what we'll place on the bust line, waistline, and the length of the top. So before we open up our dart legs, before we extend the dart legs upward, we are going to open up the dart at the waist by 1.5 inch. So 1.5 inch divided by 2 for the dart on the waistline, that will give us 0.75. So you have 0.75 on both sides of the dart leg for the waist. Now moving up to where we want the neckline to stop. So from the top, which is the shoulder, to where I want my neckline for the back to stop is I'm going to be using 7 inches. So I will go ahead and mark 7 inches all across my paper. Okay, so at this point you can decide to go lower depending on what style line you're going for. So but I'm going to use 7 inches for the chest line of the back, and I'm also going to use dotted lines as well to represent that. Okay, so on that chest line you need to extend your bust span for the dart. So I'm going to be also be placing that on the chest line, so that way we can extend the dart leg up to touch our new chest line. Okay, so now that that is extended, you can now go ahead and draw your dart legs. So you're going to be drawing your dart legs from the waist to touch the new chest line that we've created or that we've marked on this paper. You're going to do this for either side of the dart leg. Okay, so after drawing that, then you are going to bring it down to touch the hip line, which is also the length of your top. All right guys, so now that this is done, what we'll do now is to adjust the zipper so that we don't have a bulge at the back of our dress. So for us to adjust the zipper, you go to your waistline, you come in by half of an inch, that's 0.5 inch, and because you came in by half of an inch, you've altered the zipper line, so you are going to have to add that half an inch towards the side seam of this pattern. So as we took out half an inch from the waistline of the zipper line, we are going to replace it back at the side. So when you now replace it, it will now have to mean that you are going to have to redraw the side seam of this pattern. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going ahead to readjust the side seam of this back panel. So I'm going to cross out the original line so that we don't get confused. We have beginners here. So that original line we drew the first time is not what we're going to be using. So the new line that we drew is going to be our new side seam for the back. Now onto the back for the waist, right with points where we took in the half an inch for the zipper, where we readjusted the zipper, we are going to extend the line upward towards the shoulder line. Okay, so the point where we took half an inch inward at the waistline for the zipper adjustment, we will extend the line upward towards the shoulder and also bring down the other line down to touch the hip line. Okay, so now you see that the zipper for the back has taken a new shape, and we need to redraw that new shape. So towards the outer side of that line, we are going to also be taking half an inch, and then we are going to mark it out on the paper. I'm going to mark it out on the paper, and here we adjust it also to touch the shoulder line, and then to also come down to touch the hip line. So this way, if you did this, your back will not be bulging. All right, the zip, when you attach it to your dress, it will not bulge. It will stay very flat on your back. So guys, that is it for the zip and the adjustments for the back. Now moving on to the lower part of this top, before we get to the neckline, we are now going to draw out that back shape that you see at the back of that design. So you just place your ruler onto your center back, and then you draw out the back design for it. So you can decide to use a straight line for this if you want to. If you also want to do a curve like I did, you can go ahead and do so. So now I have drawn out the curve for the backs at the lower part of this top. So the next thing now is to now finish off this pattern by drawing out the neckline. So for the neckline, just place your ruler on your shoulder line at the point where you have your shoulder drop connect it down to touch the new chest line you have that has a dotted line. All right, so just use your straight ruler to connect it to that point, and then bring it all down, and that is it for the neckline for the front. Okay, then you square it out to touch the zipper line. So that is it for your neckline for the back. So this is what the back should look like. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut out. guys, this is it. I am done cutting. I have the yoke for the back, and you're going to be cutting two of it. All right, so for the center back you're cutting 2 pieces. For the side back you're also cutting 2 pieces for each of them. So this is what the back looks like after we are done cutting. So I'm going to place this on my fabric. All right, so place it on your fabric like I'm doing, so then you can go ahead and cut. So please note that the pattern I have on my fabric, I also went ahead to add 1/2 inch sewing allowance all around it. So if you look closely, you will see that I added 1/2 inch to my pattern, and that is why I am cutting exactly what I have on my pattern without an extra. So if your pattern does not have a sewing allowance to it, then when you are transferring this pattern onto your fabric, please do ensure to add your 1/2 inch sewing allowances where appropriate. So look closely, you will see that I went ahead to add 1/2 inch later on to this pattern, and they are taped together. So that is why I am cutting the pattern, the fabric, exactly how the pattern looks. Okay guys, so this is it for it. In our next video, I'm going to show you a sewing tutorial on how to join these pieces together. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know in the comment section. If you're excited to see the sewing part of this tutorial, please leave a comment. Also, do not forget to like, share, and recommend this channel to your friends. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my next one. Stay blessed. Bye.